Okay, so let's take a look at how you can create RPG project in Godot engine. So first thing, make sure to download the Godot program. Okay, you can go to downloads page, okay, and download the version that applies in your case. Okay, so for me this is 64-bit Windows version and I have already downloaded that. Okay, as you can see, I just have to run the exe and that should show you the prompt like this. Now I can create new project. I can type in RPG demo, right? We don't have this project, so what we'll do is we'll choose an empty folder. So go.demos, right? Select current folder, right? It still says go.demos, so what we'll do is create a new folder here. Just type in RPG, click OK, and it's empty, so select that. Now it will allow you. Now here the renderer we can choose ES 3.0. Now we can click on create and edit. Okay, it will create the project, and next thing you will see this 3D view which you can change to 2D. Save. Okay, next thing, in left hand sidebar you will find file system where you have this resource folder where we are going to add our RPG project assets. Right, to create an assets, what we'll do is we can go to OpenGameArt or we can go to HIO, and here we can check for assets on HIO. Right, so basically what we'll do is we'll search for RPG, or you can say role playing. Okay, so this is Cozy Farm asset pack that you can download. Okay, here you can see it is free of cost and we will be definitely making use of this in our project. Right, now the next thing would be to find an alternative. If you don't like this, you can go to OpenGameArt and search for RPG in search. That should show you a few options. Okay, here you can see RPG down. Okay, or similar the graphics you can change from the list. Okay, so choose whichever that you like. You can choose this or you can choose this. Okay, anyone would do, it's up to you. So next step would be to open your Godot engine and also go to that your assets that you just downloaded. Simply copy this and then you can drop over here. Okay, hopefully that should show up. Okay, so we have font, sprite and user interface. So anything else that you have with this you can add or remove as required. So we have few animals, characters, then grass, few windmills, farms and other things. So we will go with this for now, and what we'll do is we will see we have our current scene which is not selected. So what we'll do is in next lecture we will go through the player for our game, right? So for now we can just run this, which will ask us you haven't created any scene, so we can cancel that. We have to create a scene and then move forward with those particular sprites on our project. So this was a simple project setup for our RPG game in Godot engine. So next thing we will do is we will set up player for our RPG. So let's open our Godot and load our project. So RPG demo, I'm going to edit it. So what we have done so far is we have added our player Okay, so player sprite and tiles. Okay, apart from that, we also created our main scene, right? So what we'll do is we will drop our player and we will modify his properties. Okay, so first thing what we will do is we will create a new scene. So go to scene, new scene, and then here we will go for our kinematic body, right? Kinematic body 2D, considering this is our 2D RPG. Now let's go for create, right? Now what we will do is we will rename this node to player, right? And save it. Now what we'll do is we will create a child node. So add child node, and here what we will do is, okay, now what we'll do is we will create child node. Let's type in collision shape 2D, right? Then create, and here we will drop our first player, which would be looking to front. Let's drop it here. Okay, right, so I will just put it at the center of this point. Now keep this selected, and what we will do is we will set the shape to capsule. So now make sure that your collision shape 2D has this capsule shape. Can also increase or decrease its size. Now you can drop your player, okay, and then decide if the size is right, and also adjust the height. Just make sure that it's slightly covering your player, and considering this is RPG, make sure that you have very close space, because you will be touching a lot of objects using this player, right? Now the next thing that we are going to do is make sure that its position is set to 0, right? And we have also resized our sprite. Now what we can do here is we already have our player setup. We will have to save this, right? So once we save our player, we can also view it in our file as player.tscn file. Okay, so we have our main scene and player. So next thing we would be doing is we will create one more node, which is arraycast 2D. Now next thing we will add one more child node, name it with arraycast 2D. Select that. Okay, now that we have selected this, make sure it is enabled, right? So it will be facing downwards by default. Just verify this. So what we have done so far is we have added our sprite in our player, right? And we also set its position, also added arraycast 2D. Now next part comes in where we have to add script to make the movement, and also we will be replacing this player with animated sprite node, right? So we will take a look at that part later. Okay, so now what we will do is we will map our keyboard input with our player movement. So for that, first we have to make few changes with our project. So first thing, open our RPG project, and we have to go to project settings. So let's edit our project, and let's go to the project settings and find input map. Okay, now here you can see a tab, input map. Select that, and here we will have to create few actions for. Okay, now next thing we will add action. So say move underscore up add that. Now let's add key, which is going to be up key in our keyboard. Next we will add move underscore down. Let's add that, and for that we will add key, which is going to be down key. Then comes move underscore left, and for that we will add key left, click OK, right. Then we will add move underscore right, add that. For that we will add key right. So we have our move up, down, left and right. And let's also add one more interaction key. So interaction, let's add event space. Okay, so now we added our keyboard input for our player movement up, down, left, right and space. Okay, so now what we will do is we will add some variables to our player in RPG. So for that, let me open the project. So select and edit. Now what we'll do is we'll navigate to the player. Okay, now double click on your player scene, and here you see your player. Okay, now once you have your top player node selected, what you need to do is we have to create a script, right? New script, simply keep it player.gd create, and it should look something like this. Now we have to add a few health variables for our player in RPG. So basically RPG has HP, XP, then we also have health level and gold coins, right? So we'll try to add some of those levels within our script. So for that we have to create variables, right? So first variable we will create is current HP, right? So basically it is going to be integer. Let's start with the value of 10, right? Similarly we will also add max HP. We'll add it as integer and initial value of 10, right? Similarly we can also assign it some movement speed, so move speed, right? So what we will do is we will add value of, let's say, 200 as initial movement speed, right? Then we will also add damage because we will add enemies, so we will also add that damage 10, or let's say something smaller like 1. Next thing, we will also add level, so any level that our current player has, so that should be current level, right? It should also start from 0 so that we can gradually increase it with, let's say, XP plus gold, right? And then we will also add variable current XP integer value of 0. Okay, so let's first check why we have this red sign is because we used colon instead of equal to symbol, right? Similarly we will also add gold, so variable gold and then integer value set to like 0 because we want to collect the coins and then try to increment this value, right? Then comes variable XP to next level, right? So that whenever we want to increment this, we will use it. So it should be initially 10 to 50 range, okay? Depending on how difficult, we will add some levels. We can adjust this value later. Also variable, let's say XP to level increase, Okay, so we will assign this value as, let's say, float, because we don't know how bigger we will have levels. So we will start with small value, and if there are too many enemies and too many quests to complete, we can adjust this value as well. Now let's add one more thing. Let's see something like we are going to interact with NPC elements. So we will add interact this value, which is going to be, let's say, 50. Okay, right? We can adjust this as well later depending on how we see the result, right? Then comes variable velocity, and we are going to add that as vector 2, right? And we will also add variable facing direction, so which direction that player is facing at that moment, we will add that part, right? And finally we have to also think of raycast, right? So on ready variable raycast equals to, let's say, raycast 2D, right? Okay, now save this. Next thing what we will do is we will now manage to make this player animated, right? So we are going to rename that, and then we will animate this sprite, and then we will also add few elements like velocity, and we will also check for the input for that player. Okay, so earlier we added keyboard input to our character. Next thing we are going to do is we are going to add one function named physics underscore process. So what we will do is we will go to our player.gd, and here you can see we have our function which is underscore ready. Now here below that, what we are going to do is we are going to add one more function underscore physics process. Okay, just hit enter, right? Then what you can do is first you have to mention some of the variables, like let's say velocity equals to, let's say, velocity vector 2, right? So next thing would be we will have to map our inputs. So we will have conditions like if input dot then is action pressed. We'll have to do this for 4 times. So we will find is action pressed, right? Then we'll have to type in move up, sorry, just accidentally so we got move up as our first action, right? And here what we're going to do is we are going to add our value of velocity, which is going to be for y-axis, velocity dot y minus equals to 1, right? Next thing we will also add facing direction, that value should be vector 2, and then we have to pass 0 and -1, right? Similarly we'll have to do this for other actions too, so I will just copy it and just make the changes in its respective actions, right? So we have total of 4 actions here. First being move up, then we will replace this with move down, right? And instead of minus, what we will do is we'll do plus, because we are going down, right? Facing direction here, instead of minus, we will keep it as positive value. Then we have move underscore left. Now left means we have x-axis direction, right? So velocity dot x, right, which should be minus equals to 1, facing direction vector 2. Here, however, we will have to use minus 1 and keep our y-axis set to 0, right? Similarly, we have to move to right, right? Then again make changes to x-axis with plus equals to 1, with vector 2 value being positive 1 and 0, right? So now that we have inputs mapped with our physics process function, next thing is we will have to normalize the velocity to avoid diagonal movement of that character, right? Because sometimes what happens is that we try to push forward left and right, and it may go diagonal instead. So we'll have to avoid that, right? We have to come out and type in velocity equals to velocity dot normalized, right? Save this. Now we will also have to add one more thing, is movement. So we'll add move and slide, right? So what should go in move and slide is basically velocity multiplied by your movement speed, right? And then you'll also have to add vector 2 dot zero, right? Now that all errors are also vanished because we managed to complete dot zero, right? Save your project, and then we will check out our main scene. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go back to our main scene. We can drop our player here, or we can simply animate our player first and then drop it here and then check the main scene. Okay, now that we have added the player into our main scene, we can check if it's working. Now here you see our player can move to the bottom, left, top and right. Okay, so the basic movement is there. What we need to do is now, however, we need to add some sprites to this player. So currently our sprite is not animated. So what I have done is, let's edit our player scene. Here I have added animated sprites, and now we need to get rid of this particular player sprite. So let's delete this. So we'll ask what will happen to this collision ship 2D and recast. Okay, so we have created our animated sprite on the top of that, and we may have to change few frames within that to make the movement. So let's first delete our old player sprite. Right, now that it's deleted, what we can do is we will go to our animated sprite, and here we have to select the frames to new sprite frames. Right, now what we will do is we will check this tab at the bottom. Okay, now here what we have to do is we have to check for our sprite frames. So let's go take a look at that. Right, so when you select this sprite frames, So it will show a tab in the inspector called Sprite Frames. Currently this one is called default, and for default we have to select the sprite, right? So player, and we can see that currently our player has F1 to forward 1 2 3, then left, right, and top. Okay, so this F stands for front in my case, right? So what I will do is I will simply drag and drop to this default setup. Now I can also, okay, now next thing we can do is we can add idle. Let's rename this to idle up, and we can add, let's say, our top animation for that, right? So that should be up. Let's add another one for left, so idle left, right? So when our keyboard is not working, one of these 3 animations or 4 animations would be used. Okay, so let me edit this for proper name. Okay, so idle left, so that should be here, right? So this is for left. Let's add one more, right? Okay, so we have up, down, left, and right. Okay, so now we also have to look for the movement because we want to move left and right. So what we will do is we will check for move down, right? So move down, and for move down what we have is basically our 2 sprites, this and this. So what it will do is it will have movement for these 2, right? Now similarly I have to do this for move up, right? And we will have to add those 2 sprites, right? Similarly we do that for left, move left. So for move left we will add these 2, right? Right, then comes the another one for move right, right? So move right, this and this, right? So we will save this, and next thing that we will do is we will have to check animation. Okay, so here, right, looks pretty much good, right? Now let's take a look at if we complete everything. It'll down, left, right, top. So move down, left, right, and up. Okay, so everything is completed, and we can enable playing as well. So we'll have to do that for every sprite, right? So right, okay, now next thing we will have to do is we have to go back to our player script, so player.gd, and here we have to add one line on ready. Okay, so on ready var, and then we will have to type in name equals to animated sprite, right? And then we will have to also create one more function named manage animation, right? So what we will do is we will go to the bottom here. Okay, now what we will do is we will type in function manage underscore animation, right? And here what we will do is we will add some velocity. So if velocity dot x greater than 0, then basically what will happen is play underscore animation will go to move right. Okay, so make sure that move right, move top bottom, that naming is correct. Okay, so next condition would be else if velocity dot x less than 0, and then play underscore animation move left, right? So we will keep adding this else if for all our conditions. So let's first complete move left and right. So we will just copy this, okay, and there we will just replace it with for condition of y, and when it's y-axis, first we will want to look for up, because y will deal with up and down movement. So we will have to check that again. So y is again greater than 0, move down. You can adjust this naming for your frame animations later. So if it's camel case or not, you can later edit that as well. Okay, now we have to also check for facing direction. So we'll add one more condition, else if, right? So facing direction dot x, right? So we will check if it's 1, then we will set it to no movement, right? So play animation, right? So it will right, because we will dealing with x-axis, right? Next we will have to look for is we'll have to just change for one more direction, right? So here we will have to check for -1 because it's going in opposite direction, right? So we'll go for in the left, then comes for y, okay, which is going to be up first because it's positive value, and for y being the -1 being the bottom value, so it'll down, right? So these two things taken care of, we will have to now add our play underscore animation method, right? So what we will do is function play underscore animation, but before that we will just add some space, play underscore animation. Okay, now we will take a look at what the parameter it will give is animated name. Okay, then we will check if the animated name is not equal, then what should be the allowed value should be. So we will have some condition over there. If let's say animated dot animation is not equals to animated underscore name, right, then it should do something like anim dot play anim name, right? Now we can do is we we can check for manage animations, and we will have to call from physics process. So let's go inside our physics process, and we will pass in manage underscore animations, right? Let's see if it's working. As you can see, the default value is stuck to the right. It's constantly moving, right? So we'll have to fix that. Okay, so previously our player was moving in the right direction, so we have to fix that. So to do that, what we'll do is we will go to our player, and here you can see we have to adjust its animated sprite. So for idle down, I accidentally added idle right. So okay, so I'm fixing that by typing in idle down here. Next would be to check the script, and we have to check if it's underscore, so anim underscore name, and then we will run our script again, and here you see our default position, and when we press the down button again, it should try to walk, right? And it can go up, right, and left. So that pretty much solves the problem. Now we will have to add our tile map. Okay, so now what we'll do is we will create a tile map. So we will go to our main scene, right click on it, add child node, and we will type in tile map. So here you can see the tile map. So we'll simply have it with the default name. So if you double click on it, it will show you the view within your main scene. So we'll keep it as is for now. Now what we will do is we will create new scene. Here you can see new scene, and it's going to be 2D scene, right? Now within 2D scene, what we will do is we will convert this to our tile set scene. Now what we will do is we will just drag and drop the tiles, right? Something like this. Okay, now that all the tiles are added to our node, what we will do is convert this into a tile set. So we'll keep the name tileset.res and save this. Okay, now that we have saved this, we can also save our node as tileset, right? Okay, so if it's already there, we can overwrite it, right? Now what we can do is we can now come back to our main scene. So let's come back to main scene. We have our tile map that we created. Now what we'll do is we'll go to its tileset property, and we will load the tileset scene that we created. Open, and now what we can do is we will just drag and drop to our main scene. Okay, before that, if you want, you can zoom out. Okay, simply use control and then decide to make the change. Okay, so what I will do is I will select the tile that I want to use for this purpose, and I will simply use my left mouse to add the tile. Okay, as you can see, something like that. So if you want to remove the tile, you can simply use a right mouse click and it will be removed, right? So what we can do right now is we will create some water source, right? So I have that option here to just keep on adding. Okay, now while watching you can see how I remove the tiles, right? So simply use right click. Okay, now depending on how you want to add your tiles, you will have to recreate the scene now. Okay, so if we save this and if we go back to main scene and run, you will notice that our player has this new scene background now. We can move right through scene, so we'll have to watch out for the items that are below and above the player so that he can go on top of them, right? So we'll go through that as well. Okay, now if we run our current setup, you will find that our player is now missing, and also we can add new tile, but that would remove the existing one. So to do that, what we'll have to do is, first we will have to make our player visible. So we will take our player to the bottom and get the tile map onto the top, and you will see your player is now visible. You can run and test it. Here you see your player is visible. You can move left and right, top, bottom, left and right. Okay, so that out of the way, what we'll have to do now is we will have to rename this tile map as underscore ground, and we'll have to create one more child node with tile map, right? Rename this to above, right? But though this is above, you will have to check that it's still player below, otherwise there will be collision just like the last time. And we will have to edit this tile map above by setting its tile set property to the same tile set that we use, right? And now we can add those elements that we want it to appear on the top, right? So things like, let's say, bushes. If you want, you can have them over some random positions, right? Okay, and similarly you can remove them and replace it with others. Okay, so if you don't want any particular, you can simply remove that. You can add things like random boxes. Okay, and I have some pretty different type of bushes over here as well. Okay, now let's try to add some variety. Okay, right, so here's what I have. Okay, as you can see, it's random. Next is I will have to add some barrel randomly for no reason at all. Okay, so now that it is added, you can notice that these items are added on the top of our previous tile map, right? So if I run this, what will happen? As you can see, all those elements are here. Okay, and my player can go through those items, right? So it's fine for bush, but I don't want that to happen for our box and this barrel over here, right? So we'll have to work on the collision, right? Okay, so we discussed the collision of some of the objects that we see. Okay, so when our player moves to, say, this barrel, I want some sort of collision to happen, but currently we don't have that. So I just want to set collision for this box and barrel, because the rest of the bushes we can allow our player to go through that, and it's just fine because we do go through that, right? Currently I have set the collision to our bushes, and as you can see, our player can't move unless it goes over that region, right? So currently the region is a bit too much, so I can remove that. And for that, what we'll do is we'll go here and I will simply replace this with my green tiles. Okay, right? And if I want, I can do the same here for this bush as well. Okay, but coming back to our collision, we can set that up by going to our tile set. Okay, so let's go here and then we will check for which sprite we want to do that. So let's say if I want to do this for barrel, I will click on edit, click on this image, and then I will set the size for that collision, right? Don't try to complete this entire sprite because that will take more space on our screen as well. Okay, so once you do that, you can do that for other sprites as well. Okay, I will try to have only limited amount of sprites in that case. Okay, so let's see, this is the box, so let's have it for this region as well. Right, now let's come back here and see how many elements that we have. So we already have box, 2 barrels, and let's say if I have anything else. So if I want to have a fence, okay, for let's say this particular water source, I will see if I can add that on top. Okay, so let's go here and check the fence. Okay, and let's try to add it here. So as you can see, it will consume a lot of space, so our player won't be able to move close to even this fence, and it will only able to go through this particular road, right? So let's save this and test it out if collision works. Right, so let's run this, and here you see this is our barrel and my player can't go through it, so the collision works. So here you see the collision space is a bit bigger, right? So I will have to manage how much it consumes, so I will have to edit that. Now comes the part for fences near our pond. Here you can see it won't get much close, which is good. You don't want player to die in pond, so that's fine. So collision does work, but you'll have to adjust the spacing it takes, right? So we'll take a look at some of the other items by extending this particular scene into a lot bigger for the player movement. So now currently our player can move within our scene. Okay, it has few collisions as expected. You can go through bushes, however, right? So right, pretty much we have everything, but this is more of a perspective view. Okay, as you can see. But if we want to have our camera on the player so that it can have limited visibility, and we will have it in more of exploratory view, right? To do that, we will have to add 2D camera to this particular player. Okay, so what we will do is we will add our main scene and we will create a camera 2D node, right? So camera 2D, right? We created that. Now next thing is we will have to make it follow our player, and to do that we will have to create a new script attached to this particular node. So double click on our this node and we'll have to create a script, right, and create new script, camera 2D, right, and within our script we will have to type in on ready. Then our target is going to be the player, right. So we will have to use get underscore node, right, and here we will have to pass on basically a path which is going to be root, then main scene, and then we'll have to give it our player, right. Then we will have to come back and we will have to think of our process delta. So let's remove this comment, right. So if we remove the comments, it will be visible like this. Here we will have to add position and we'll have to make it equals to target.position, target.position, right, and make sure to save this. Okay, and we will have to rename this script. So let's rename it to, let's say, camera follow, right. So instead of 2D we will just rename it to camera follow, right. Save this. Now what we will have to do is we will have to go back in the inspector. So if we check the property over there, we'll have to choose current for our camera 2D, and then we'll have to check whether our player gets followed by it, right. As you can see, we didn't place the camera right, so it will show something like this, but if we move the player, the scene will move accordingly, right, as you can see. So we'll have to build a bigger scene that covers this entire camera view, right. So this is the basic RPG that you can build. From here you can build extension like adding the enemy, adding certain collisions that will trigger some sort of enemies or blast, or even you can add incentive system inside the RPG that includes coin or some levels that will be adding experience to your current RPG player. So this is pretty much the basic RPG setup that you can build.